We are ultra novices. Only this episode. From here on out, it's nowhere to go but up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Movers and Makers virtual chat series, brought to you by Low-Key Arts here in the town of Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas. Movers and Makers is made possible with a generous contribution from the Gail Pratt Fraser Trust, to whom we are very grateful. I'm your host, Sonny Kay, Executive Director of Low-Key Arts. I'm grateful that you could be here with us this evening for what I'm certain will be a compelling discussion with somebody whose work I have admired and felt inspired by for a long time. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to our program from Chicago, Illinois, Damon Locks. Damon?
Hey, how are you?
Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here. I came all the way from my bedroom to the living room to be here.
Well, thank you for making that effort on our behalf. It's great to see you. It's great to have you here.
Likewise.
Welcome to Hot Springs, virtually speaking.
Yeah, it's much nicer. No, forget it.
You ever been to Hot Springs?
I've never been to Hot Springs, no.
All right. Well, hopefully we can turn that around one day and get you down here in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very grateful to the opportunity to talk to you about your work and maybe some of your inspirations and a little bit of your history and what motivates you to do what you do. And if at any point you want to talk about something that we're not talking about, please force that issue, all right?
Okay, will do.
So without further ado, I'd love to begin by talking about your background just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone who might not be familiar, you grew up outside of Washington, D.C.
Correct.
And were active there in the punk scene as a teenager, as I understand it.
Yep.
Before moving first to New York for school for a couple of years,
Yep.
and then ultimately to Chicago.
You got it.
Where you attended the School of the Art Institute. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And let's talk about that a little bit. Did you choose an emphasis when you were in school?
I came from School of Visual Arts in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and I was an illustration major originally.
Okay.
By my second year at School of Visual Arts, I was taking a painting class, and the painting teacher was like, "We're gonna get you teach you a style that can be marketable." And I was, 18 years old or something like that, 19 maybe. And I said, shouldn't I just be learning about art? Like, it's too early. Like, I don't know enough to have a style, And so I had been talking to a friend of mine who was in Chicago that came to the Art Institute. And she was like, the Art Institute is great. There's just a bunch of weirdos there. And I said, maybe I should come hang out with you there. And
Sure.
So I came to visit and I met a bunch of weirdos and I was like, I'm in, let's do this, And that's when I actually I met the first guitar player for my band Trenchmouth on that visit. And
Okay.
then I went back to New York and I talked to Fred and Wayne, who I was playing music with in New York. And I was like, I'm moving to Chicago. And then Fred's like, I'm moving to Chicago too. Let me ask Wayne if Wayne wants to go.
Okay.
So, and a month later, they moved out, and I was already living with the first guitar player. So.
I had no idea about any of that. I assumed that the group just kind of concreted together in Chicago. I didn't realize that you guys, all three of you, migrated together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was my next question was actually how did you meet Wayne? But I guess it's how did you meet Wayne and Fred?
Yeah. Well, since I didn't answer your first question, when I got to the Art Institute, I was able to take a bunch of classes, and I had not been taking printmaking classes at the Art Institute, and I think printmaking was where I was because in New York, everyone was painting at the time, and I was trying to paint, but I was actually also using like stencils and making stencils and creating paintings with that. And I think when I got to Chicago, I was like, oh, I think I'm actually a printmaker. So I started.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. No, but so when I got here, started doing printmaking, and probably instantly started Trenchmouth. So it all came together like immediately because I moved in with the guitar player. That guitar player suggested another guitar player who had practice space. So we were like, everyone's in the band. Let's do it. And so we started. And I think maybe 3 months later we had our first show.
Had you been playing music in DC before you left, or were you too young for that?
No, I was in a band called Pro Tem. I mean, I had a band in ninth grade called my ninth grade band was called Potential Disturbance. And,
That's a great name.
yeah, don't think too much about Minor Threat when you think disturbance.
Sure.
But by my senior year, I was in a band called Pro Tem, and that band was that was an interesting band. I had later the guitar player. I mean, the guitarist who would later be in Stinking Lizaveta, Yanni Papadopoulos, a singer who would later, the bass player who would later become a singer for Dag Nasty, Pete Moss or Peter Kortner, and the drummer who was the second drummer for Beefeater for Need a Job EP. So that was the band I was in.
Who was that? Just incidentally. Who was that drummer? Who was that drummer?
Mark Shellhouse was his name. He was just for that one EP.
Okay. He's not somebody who wound up in Fidelity Jones or any of that stuff after. Okay.
No.
Wow. Okay. So interesting. So you were doing it early on.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as I found punk music, I was like, oh, people can make bands? I didn't know that.
Like DC was a place where everyone felt that encouragement, I think, early on to contribute, right?
Yeah. It was just like you could have a band regardless of whether you could play or not. And I decided to form a band with my then like really close friend Derek, and we didn't do anything. Like we couldn't play any instrument. So we contacted this band in high school called Faithful Treason, and they were much more like new wave than we were.
Okay.
And they had another guy in high school who was their manager. So we had a meeting with the guitar and the manager of the band, and we were like, we would like to join our band with your band. And then they said, okay. And our band was just two guys that didn't know how to sing. And their band was the bass player, guitar player, and drummer. And so we merged and became Potential Disturbance.
Well, clearly you and the other guy were bringing something that the group was lacking. Some kind of personality, I guess. But
I think so, yeah. I still have a tape of that first show. We did a very clever show where the first show was Faithful Treason, because we were playing at our high school. Faithful Treason did 2 songs. And then we joined and we did like Stepping Stone and If the Kids Unite by Sham 69. And that was our debut. Yeah.
Stepping Stone was like folk music pretty much for the DC punk scene. It's like a folk tradition almost, right?
Yeah, everyone had to do it. Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. Okay. And so then you went to New York and you did form a group there, it sounds like, with these guys.
Yeah. We started a band, it was called Shovel. And Shovel was like, we played a bunch of shows. We even played at 930 Club. I think that was with either Government Issue. I think it was Government Issue and a group called Vile Cherubs at the time. And,
the name. Yep.
Yeah. And then when I moved to Chicago, like Fred and Wayne decided to move too. So.
Okay. Did you guys all meet at school in New York?
I met Fred in school. Fred was in art school as a film major or studying film, but he really just wanted to be in a band. Like the lore of everyone that was like all the like punk bands that he loved is that if you go to art school, then you'll find other people to play music with. And
could he really play? I mean, was he a drummer?
Yeah, he was a drummer. He was a drummer. Yeah, a big fan of like Clem Burke, and the drummer for Devo was a huge influence on him. So he was very musical from the get-go. Okay.
So you guys then relocate to Chicago and managed to get your first EP out even before the 90s. You guys put out an EP in 1989.
Yeah, we recorded Snakebite, and we had no concept. At the time, we were like, I think we were like a 6-piece band because we like our first or second show, this guy Chris Kupsak came to the show and he was dancing like crazy, and we were like, "You seem to be really enjoying this. Why don't you just be in the band?" And so he became like a percussionist, backing vocalist.
Okay.
And we decided that we wanted to record something really quickly, and we had no concept of like how to record anything. So we went to a studio and just played everything live. And we'd play it live, and then we would sit in the control booth and be like, "How's that sound?" And we'd be like, "Let's do another take." And we did another take. So that's how we did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that produced 4 songs that made it onto the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and was that a self-released project? Did you have someone to put that out for you?
There was a label called Ad Infinitum, which was a guy who was in. I should remember this. I'm having trouble remembering, but he has a small label, very small.
In Chicago?
His name was Bill DeLeonardis, I think, and he had a band, and he was just starting to put out records, so he was supportive and put that out. And then I think we paid for most of the stuff, I think, and then the second pressing we just did ourselves, I think.
Okay. And you guys toured? You guys toured on that record?
We probably went a couple places. Like, it was the 80s, late 80s, so we were able to book stuff and just start playing immediately. Fred really gravitated to like booking and really wanted to play everywhere, so that was great because I didn't really have that like natural tendency to want to book shows.
Sure.
I was cool with like designing the artwork and stuff and conceptualizing. So it was very much Fred was like, "Let's go, let's play a show, let's do the stuff." And so we traveled a lot. We played like everywhere.
Fantastic. Okay. I mean, it was an easy thing to do. I mean, relatively speaking, back then there was a really dense network, and you guys are in the Midwest. They probably didn't have to go more than an hour or two to find a room with 200 people really excited to see you, I would imagine.
Yeah, you could go to Michigan or up to Madison or go down to Indiana. We played all kinds of halls and rental spaces and slept on people's floors. You know the deal.
Oh yeah. And now when we were testing everything out, you mentioned touring with the Dog-Faced Hermans. I wasn't aware that ever happened. I didn't.
Yeah, happened twice.
Happened twice. Wow. Okay. Just in the U.S. or in Europe too?
Just in the U.S.
Okay.
We played with them, I would say, once at the height of their powers. Oh my goodness. Like, they were so good, that first tour, every single show just blew me away. Like, I thought we were good, but like every time I watched them, I would be like, this is incredible. Like, I felt like it was like, they taught me a lesson. Like, a couple bands were bands that like taught me a lesson that I put in my back pocket. And the lesson that they taught me was, when I watched them play, it was like sun coming over a mountaintop. And it was like kind of brilliant, like just rising sun. And so like Marion was playing trumpet and would have this like melody thing, and Andy would be like head down, like playing guitar almost upside down, and the bass player Colin would just swing his bass back and forth and like bang into the wall. And Wilf, who was the drummer, was this like thin guy, but he just played like he was gonna have a heart attack. He was just like, "Rah!" And it was so like joyful. And I was like, oh, no one I know plays joyfully. Like, I don't understand the concept.
Sure. Yeah.
So every single show, regardless of how good we were, there was still that sun coming up over the mountain of their sets.
Wow.
And it was really amazing. And we learned a lot from that. And then the second time we played was like near they were disbanding at the end of the tour. So, they were still really phenomenal. I just think morale wasn't as high. Yeah.
So, okay. So I didn't. So did they break up on tour in the U.S.? Is that what you're saying?
I think their last show was in San Francisco.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And we played I think so, but we played with them, and the record was on Alternative Tentacles, and Jelly Biafra had come to the show. As far as I remember, that was going to be their last show.
Okay. Wow. And that would have been 91 or 2, probably, something like that.
I can't remember.
Not that it matters. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it may have even been later than that. I feel compelled to ask this, and it's probably the question you get asked the most, but was Fred always funny?
Fred was always funny, yes. I would say that most of us were funny.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun on the road. Like, we would just have bits and bits. And I feel kind of bad for most of the people that we ran into, because when we were on tour, we would just keep the bits going. And it didn't matter if you didn't know what we were talking about. We were just in it, you know? So we were always clowning around, and, some of that material made it into, Portlandia. I will occasionally get a phone call from Fred being like, I'm using that thing that you did. And that's fine. Go for it,
That's cool.
Yeah. But he was always funny. Yeah.
I tried to find your cameo on Portlandia on YouTube, isolated by itself, but I couldn't. I don't know if it exists or not, but
no, it kind of comes and goes. It'll be there sometimes, and it'll be gone sometimes.
Keeps getting flagged for some inappropriate
for brilliance. It gets flagged.
Just keeps getting monetized and breaking the bank.
It's too brilliant for YouTube.
That's right. So the Eternals kicked off late 90s, and we'll take a little walk through some of the album art in just a few minutes. But I wanted to ask you. I mean, the Eternals have put out a lot of records over the last couple decades on a handful of highly respectable underground labels in the U.S. And the last couple of those have actually come out domestically in Brazil as well, which is something of an unusual development, I think, for most American bands. Can we talk about that a little bit? How did that happen?
Yeah. I mean, we were putting out records on Aesthetics, and we put out this strange EP called the Black Museum, right? And it was
Aesthetics, of course, being a record label from Chicago.
Yes. So we were putting out stuff on that, and we made this EP called Black Museum, and it was so strange, but I loved it. It was lots of sound collage stuff and really weird, and it all made sense to us. But I got an email from a label in Brazil saying, can we reissue this as a CD? Maybe a split CD with a Brazilian group. And I was like, oh, I guess so, sure. I got to talk to Wayne and Dan, who were in the band at the time, and we were like, yeah, why not? We talked to Aesthetics. Aesthetics said, cool. They asked me to do more artwork for the CD. I did more artwork. When the CD was going to come out, they were like, can you guys come to Brazil to promote the EP? And we were like, this is like a 5-song, super weird EP. Yeah, we can come to Brazil. And we came to Brazil, maybe it was 2003, I feel like. And it was so whirlwind. Because as soon as we hit the ground, we started playing. But we went
Where did you go? You flew into Sao Paulo or Rio?
Sao Paulo.
Okay.
And so we did maybe 7 shows-ish, like we played like every night. And we ended up back in Sao Paulo. And by the time we got back, word had spread that this amazing band was in town. So we had like maybe twice or 3 times the amount of people at our last show. And that just formed this like wonderful relationship with Brazil, and especially Sao Paulo. But the guys that were on Herchmold, that were on the the CD, just became like such good friends. Like their taste, the things that they like, it was like meeting someone from your own neighborhood. Like they had rare records that you had. They had Trenchmouth records. We were just like,
really? Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
On our last night there was a party, and there was a woman there, a girl at the time, I'm sure, that had a Trenchmouth tattoo. And we were like, what? How is this possible? The food is amazing. The people are incredible. Trenchmouth exists here, you know?
Wow.
So yeah, we've been back to Brazil many times, and luckily my involvement with Exploding Star Orchestra also has taken me back to Brazil several times. So I think I've been there like maybe 11 times.
Really? Good God.
Yeah.
And you've
Yeah.
played every one of those times?
One time I didn't play.
Wow.
One time,
that's remarkable, man.
yeah. One time there was like a collective group with Jeff Parker and Rob Mazurek and a bunch of people from Brazil and some people from England, and there was a lot of people, but I was there to do like show graphics, you know, for the backdrop. So I was projecting, yeah. So that was great because we were on a tour bus, and all I had to do is have my computer, plug my computer in, and work the graphics. It was awesome.
Wow, that sounds like it's a totally different kind of way to be on tour.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what group was that?
Icondeo was the name of the group.
Okay.
And there's a full length that I did the artwork for, and a 7-inch.
Okay, wow. All right. Yeah. But it's people from the States? People from Chicago?
States and Brazil.
Okay. Wow, I got to track that down.
Like Mike Ladd is on it, you know, the rapper Mike Ladd.
Sure.
Like he's too, and then there's a beautiful Brazilian singer, Jussara, sings on it. So it was a real collection of people.
How do you spell that? I just want to write it down.
Good question. It's I'll get it for you before.
Yeah, get back to me. Have your people get back to me on that one.
Yeah.
Have you I know that one time I was in Japan, and our mutual friend Katoman was in the process of issuing a Eternals EP for Japan. Did you guys play in Japan?
We played Japan twice.
You did twice, okay. Yeah. How does it compare? How would you compare Japan to Brazil? I would imagine that there's both places are so remote. Then you hear about people's joy at Westerners coming and making the trek to be there. How does it compare playing in Japan versus playing in Brazil?
Well, I would say firstly, Brazil was something that I could never have imagined. And Brazil is at its best is a beautiful collection of language and music, and there's a real kind of, you know, there's like kind of a feeling of the like African diaspora, but also you can see there's a lot of Japanese influence there. There's also there's like an Italian energy as well, you know. So there's all these things just kind of oriented in a way that you hadn't experienced but feel familiar. So me, I went there and I was like, I've never seen this, but I recognize this, or I've never heard this, but I recognize it, you know. And there's a connective tissue to like cultural things that I'm culturally familiar with that I love. I can feel that connective tissue and be like, these are like long lost cousins of some sort, you know. Japan is otherworldly from me, but it matched my imagination. Like it matched my imagination and beat it, you know. Like, so I couldn't imagine Brazil, but I did imagine Japan. And when I got to Japan, I'm like, this is just like I thought, but more, you know. I was like, this is where Ultraman comes from, you know. So all of those things kind of started to make sense. And
that's also, right. You and Ralph are really into comics. I forget about that.
Yeah. And the way that culturally, the way people respond is totally different. Like in Brazil, they're very like, oh, let's do this, let's dance, you know. And in Japan, they're very much more reserved and very respectful and very like, thank you, you know. And you want to be like, hey, let's do something. And they're like, it's cool, we are doing something. Thank you.
It's the culture of live music. does it take place later at night in Brazil? My assumption is that it seems like a place that would be things don't kick off until 11 or midnight or something. That's probably a fabrication, but yeah.
I feel like if my memory serves me, it started at regular times and was very, very efficient at the time. Like it would start now and end now, you know? I think that was the only place I went to where when you set up for sound check, someone would be there to look at how you set up. And then you'd leave, you'd eat some food, you do whatever. And when you came back, you know, for your show, actually, sorry, you'd break down and the opening band would set up for sound check. And when you came back, after they were done, someone had already set up your stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you were, all that stuff, someone was watching and paying attention and set up all your stuff for you. It was incredible.
I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah, it was so amazing. I think one of my things I feel really bad about is that one of the shows that we played in Shibuya, I remember I just was out of my head. You know, I was in show mode, and I got off the stage, and I was down in the amongst everyone, and they had the high tables that had stools and people's drinks on them, and I like knocked everyone's drink off the table, and then got up on the table.
Wow. And
then the table, of course, is one of those high tables that are unstable. So I'm trying to sing on this thing, and luckily everyone is like holding the table steady for me. So then I finished the show. The show's over. People ate that up. They loved it because it was just like, this is so crazy. And then afterwards, when we were breaking down, I saw the person that is cleaning up, and I really tried to help clean up because I was like, I knocked one drinks off the thing, and I really wanted to help, and that person was not having it. They were like, no. And I was like, I want to help clean. They're like, no. And I was like, I'm sorry. I felt really terrible because I was like, I did this, you know?
So interesting.
Yeah.
I love those moments there. These things that these unexpected, you know, cultural niceties, I guess, or sort of polite stubbornness. You experience in so many different ways, but it's yeah, I love that. I think of all the time. I was there with one trip in particular with Locust, and I remember we did, you know, this insistence that we'd have to be there for sound check at like 2 PM at these little venues. I'm sure there's probably some of the same exact ones you're talking about. And you get there and you load in, and there's a whole staff is there, and there's all of this effort put into just really pretty, you know, awesome dialed in sound check. And we would have the other experience where we'd leave and go to dinner and come back, and it was like the sound check had never happened. Like the show would happen, and it would just be this total, like, you know, wild card thing. Like they'd never heard the band before. Like that would happen over and over again. It's just like, did they somehow get drunk between, you know, in the 8 hours that have elapsed since we sound checked and like the actual show itself, or I don't know. I mean, it was hilarious, and it never really was an issue at all. It was just fun, funny. But I know what you mean. I mean, the culture of efficiency only goes so far when it starts pedaling back on itself, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's see here. I guess I'd like to at least spend a little bit of time talking about your visual art and some of the album jackets that you've done. Just in the context of this conversation, I think we've been talking so much about what you do. We haven't really shared any of it. So with that in mind, I'd like to do that. A little bit of a cheat sheet here. We're going to go chronologically, starting from back in the mid-90s with Trenchmouth here. And I don't know if this we can peek around and do whatever, but yeah, this is how this is gonna appear tonight. So anything you want to say about any of these, feel free to. If not, I'll just
I think this was our like third record, and I'd really gotten my sea legs in designing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first couple records I was just like trying stuff, and this was like I want to do this. So I actually had a friend who was a photographer, and we purposely shot buildings and had a session for the photographs, and I took pictures of these clocks. And yeah, I think that this package was probably my most successful up to date, because it went through to the booklet of the CD and the back cover. So I felt like all the like fonts and texts and Trenchmouth versus the Lightest Sun, I just thought was a great name as well. So I just felt like conceptually it was all together.
Now, are these constructed in? Are these laid out in? Are these built in Photoshop and Quark or?
Yeah, these were Photoshop, and at the time I still wasn't adept at Photoshop. So I think I remember I used to go up to Minneapolis to lay out the artwork at a place called Designstein.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the guy who ran Designstein, not the guy I worked with, but the guy who opened Designstein was the brainchild behind Lips Incorporated, who did Funky Town.
Yeah, okay.
So I remember him stopping by the computer being like, hey, this looks good. He's like, you ever heard of Funky Town? I wrote that. Yeah.
That's incredible. So he took that money from Funky Town and bought a bunch of high-end machines and started outputting films and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. Okay, learn something new.
That's just a touch of the kind of gems you're gonna get tonight.
That's just incredible. Like At the Drive-In and Lips Incorporated, there's a common
thread. Exactly.
Speaking of which, let's jump to this one.
That one, I think, is that chronologically correct? Did that come out after?
Yes, this is we've gone from 1994 with the Trenchmouth record. This is 1999 now.
Okay, I think this was the first time I did a record cover for someone else. I know that I'd done the At the Drive-In and Burning Airlines picture disc.
Yeah.
And then they asked me to do this, and still I was not computer savvy. And Jason Farrell did the layout. And so I kind of talked to Omar about the kind of concepts that they were playing with. So I just made a bunch of imagery and sent it to Jason. Mm-hmm. And then maybe I got a phone call or email asking for more stuff in a certain direction. And then this happened. And it came out great. The funny thing about the most interesting thing about this story was that I was going to mail the artwork to Jason one morning, and I was riding my bike to work, and I had all the artwork in a tube. And when I got to work, the artwork wasn't in the tube.
It had fallen out?
It had fallen out, and I retraced my steps, and it was in the road. And the building drawing, the yellow building, like that yellow part, that building drawing has a tire track across the back of it.
Oh my God.
In real life. So luckily, it was salvageable. So I collected the art and then mailed it.
That's unbelievable. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And this is also one of the pieces that I get the most random emails.
I was going to say, I would suspect that either this or the Bassnectar record that you've done might be probably the biggest sellers. I don't know.
It probably. The Bassnectar is like lives in such a world outside of my world.
Sure.
I have no idea how popular that record was or not. But this record is the people track me down, and they want to see the rest of the Trojan horse. They want to get a tattoo.
And I've seen some of those.
Yeah, and my original piece, there is no rest of the tattoo. I mean, sorry, drawing. It goes just below where you can see, and then the top of the horse's head and the back, and that's what I have. But there is a piece of artwork that was At the Drive-In artwork that does the rest of it.
I remember that being on a T-shirt in Japan, actually.
Yeah, but I didn't do that.
You didn't do that, okay.
No.
Oh, okay. That was somebody probably at Grand Royal or something like that. I would
Yeah,
think. Interesting.
but
So, but
I'll
the
get I'll get an email occasionally being like, I want to get a tattoo. Do you have the rest of that? And
rest
I
of
was,
the picture. Oh, how funny! Wow. Okay. So, yeah, I guess I just want to point out this is the second jacket that we're looking at, and also the second appearance of buildings, which I think are probably the single most common uh,
yeah,
thread in your work. I don't know if you would agree or not, but
yeah,
the urban sort of vertigo-inducing urban landscape, I feel like is a constant presence in your work.
yeah. I'm gonna go with that. Yes.
Oh, we've got a bunch of comments here, Damon, that I haven't been noticing. Oh, everyone's just saying nice things. Thanks. Well, thanks everyone. That's really cool. Okay. So let's jump over here to what's next. This one.
Ah,
So this would be 2000.
yeah. The first Eternals record. I was working. I also didn't do the computer on this.
Mhm.
Um, and this one, though I didn't do the computer work on it, it is something that like helped me kind of start my style. Like I feel like this is the beginning of what you might recognize as something that Damon would do. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that this one was fun because I was able to like work on this and sit next to the person. It was very much like working on a recording where you're sitting with the engineer trying to make this thing happen.
Just
I,
layering in channels of imagery.
yes, so Andy Mueller is a designer, and Andy really was super supportive. Like he was like, "You can do this. Like you can do this on your own." And I was like, "I'm afraid I can't do it. You have to do it." You know. So I provided him with lots of writing and drawing, and we sat together and made this. And he did a
Okay.
fantastic job. Loved it.
I love it too. I love it too, and I love the feeling of we get sort of a layer of photograph. We get a layer of grime and sort of wear and tear, and this a layer of this really the beautiful like high contrast illustrations. I feel like those are characters that kind of recur in your work
Yeah.
a little bit.
I was as I was saying, I was a printmaker back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had before this I was kind of known for like a linoleum cut style.
Mm-hmm.
And then the further I got away from art school, the less I had access to printing presses.
Okay.
So I was like burnishing stuff myself. And
Okay.
then eventually I just started doing ink drawings, and my ink drawings looked like linoleum cuts.
They sure
Uh,
do. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's what actually, and I love that aspect of it because I'm I love lino cut work myself, and I just think it's got a real like tactile uh, print that printmaking kind of like a miniature like lithograph. You know what I mean? It's
mhm.
just you get these smears and stuff that are just very I don't know. It's almost like calligraphy or something in a way when it starts getting sloppy.
Hmm.
All right, keeping with the Eternals here. This one from 2004, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
That's the Rawar style, which is our, I think is that our second album? Or is that our
I think
third?
this is your second. I believe it's your second.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was fun. Like I felt like I was still still experimenting to see what would happen. And so there's lots of things that I'm like, oh, that mistake looks really cool, or that that excuse me, that looks interesting. What if I have these building windows covering over the face of this weird animal? I
Mm,
think also established in the first record, on the top left hand corner was a weird animal. And so throughout the Eternals, there would be cityscapes and strange animals that were
Right.
sometimes hybrids of other types of animal, people, creatures.
Yeah.
So this was the like bringing the animal creature to the forefront.
Right. Well, yeah. With that in mind, we have this one, which came just a couple of years later.
Yes. And
2007.
this one, I felt super comfortable. I'm pretty sure that I was, I think on the last record and this record, I did myself on the computer. And so I see a big São Paulo influence because that's Brazil up at the top.
Okay. Yeah.
And so heavy international was something that we were talking about when we would be in Brazil. Like we're like, oh yeah, we're going heavy international with this one.
It's such a cool slogan. It seems so loaded and so meaningless at the same time. It's awesome. I love it.
And so since that was really fun to have that kind of nod because we literally just kept saying it. So people and our friends in Brazil would be like, oh yeah, this is it. This is what we were talking about.
I never noticed until right now that you've isolated the R at the I and the O for Rio. Is that on purpose?
No.
No. That just jumped out at me right now.
Yeah.
I love your muted palettes. I think it's something that's that's so useful to. I think so many artists could learn from restraint. Your work is very restrained in that sense. It's very explosive and chaotic, component wise, and yet your palette is so reserved. It sort of diffuses the chaos a little bit, if that makes sense. It makes the kinetic gesture of the whole thing a little bit more I don't know, consumable, I guess. That's maybe not the word I'm looking for, but
maybe it holds it together, gives you enough to ground it.
Yeah. I think if this work was really colorful, I think it would be less immediate and less. It would not. Well, it just certainly wouldn't have the feel it does. I guess that's my point.
Well, I'm about to challenge that, Sonny, because the newest record, there's a new Black Monument record that we're finishing up. That's really bright colors.
Okay. Well, great. Oh, fantastic. Bring it on. All right.
Yeah, I think maybe the pandemic has changed me.
Well, I'm excited to see where that change takes you. Let's see here. A few more of these, and then we will get into talking about Black Monument Ensemble, which I'd love to do. This is our, this might be our sort of not patient zero moment, but right around now is when you and I began sort of working together, I think, in one capacity or another. This is a mutual friend of ours, our good friend Ralph Darden in Chicago. His group Jai-Alai Savant. I had the very good fortune of being able to release this record to the world in 2007. And Damon, this is your gorgeous artwork on the cover, as it was on all their releases. And this is sort of a depiction of Ralph, is that right? As the bass delegate, he's sort of in disguise with this mastodon head.
Well, I didn't think of it literally as Ralph. It was more like I knew that this album was a story, had a main character. So I was like, what would that main character look like? And so that was it, because I think Ralph is secretly on the flip side of the record. There's a silhouette of him jumping and with a cape. But I mean, this could be him too, because you can't see it. But my brain, I was like, this story needs a character for the narrative, And I was having fun also, like distorting my own handwriting. So that was just a thing that I hadn't done before, where I was like, I'm going to write this out write the text out myself and then distort.
Now, were you distorting it digitally or a Xerox machine or something?
It was digitally. I was like pulling it apart, pulling it and.
Sure. Okay.
And I was still in my it's a very dirty phase. I've pulled back with the grime a little bit, but I always love grime. Grime for some reason makes everything look more realistic to me.
I can understand that, and I think I mean, being as somebody who's grown up on the West Coast and in relatively urban places. I mean, when I visit Chicago, I notice the urban decay of the whole place. You know what I mean? You drive through those you've got tons of those little concrete underpasses that have train tracks going over. So they feel like they're all about to crumble. They feel like they're about to. It's gonna be your last tunnel or something. You know what I mean? I think the grime in your work definitely. It feels very purposeful, and I can understand it. I guess is what I'm saying.
We also had more of that the building scenario in that one, the like imposing building.
Absolutely, yeah.
I also love telephone wires too, so they appear a lot.
Ah, okay, yeah. I guess that's I would be lying if I said I hadn't noticed that too. This one though really breaks the mold for you a little bit, I think.
Yeah, this one was hard work though.
I bet you. Now, what was this? Do you remember what label put this out?
I don't remember the label, but I had been a music publicist for a company called Biz3 Publicity.
Yeah,
and I did that for like 7-8 years. And post that, Catherine from Biz3 called me up and said, "Hey, can you do a Bassnectar record cover?" And I said, "Sure." And so we were kind of doing it over email, and I was sending it back and forth. And I had only like kind of abstract ideas about what they wanted, so I had to like kind of follow and flow. And I just tried to make it as luminous as I could. Like I wanted it to feel like there was light, like how do I make something feel like there's light coming through it or out of it? And that it was birthed from a photograph of traffic through my front window. So that's like a screen in the window, and there's traffic lights going through. I mean, car lights in the background. And that just added more and more and more light. And then I figured out how to make letters look like light,
It's really cool. When I was teaching a graphics Photoshop course a couple months ago, I got really hot and heavy with everybody about what are called layer styles in Photoshop, and I imagine that you know your way around that feature pretty well from seeing this.
I do. I think one of my biggest gripes about the world, and maybe they fixed it because I used Photoshop from 2005, but maybe they fixed it. When you work in RGB, you can do all kinds of beautiful, amazing things. But then when you have to switch the mode to CMYK, the colors are not nearly as amazing.
That's a soul-crushing moment for any.
When you have to, because you like the beautiful thing. So, I've learned some tricks and how to try to make something. But something like this, it made it through. Sometimes I'll have to change the mode and then go back in and do more saturation and do some other fancy things to keep the light, like keep the vibrance,
Right. Interesting. We've while we've been talking, we've had a handful of comments from Ralph talking about how great Flight of the Bass Delegate is, how great the singer is, how handsome he was.
I'm in full agreement. I'm glad Ralph made those comments.
Agree more. Yes. When's the next record coming out? That's my question. Where are we going from Bassnectar? We have another few to check out here. This one, of course, is your follow-up At the Drive-In release from just a couple of years ago. Another Animal.
Yes.
Were you given sort of carte blanche to do whatever you wanted with this?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there were certain things that they liked that they wanted to see,
Hmm.
and I kind of went that direction, but they didn't. I think they responded with feelings, and maybe responded to some of my other artwork and been like, we like what this looks like. With this, I and Rob Shaw did a series. Rob Shaw, the animator, did some of the videos, like 3 videos for them,
Hmm.
along with this cover. I really was trying to push for the inside image to be the front cover.
Okay.
That's why I really wanted to be the front cover.
Uh, I wish, I wish I had grabbed one of those to display now too. What
Yeah,
what is that? If you could describe it.
that has the burning police cars.
Oh, yeah, that's a yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I really enjoy.
Mhm.
This is the cover, and they're like, oh. I was like, oh,
Oh well, it wasn't meant to be. This one uh, is very evocative to me. I love this. This might be my single favorite piece of your work. Although
oh,
it's
great.
actually it's hard for me to put my finger on just one, but there's something about this that just is a home run for me
Mhm.
as a designer, and I think it's just it's the colors, it's the textures, it's everything about it. What is this group? Irreversible Entanglements.
Entanglements. It is kind of a jazz improvisational spoken word group.
Okay.
Uh, that collection of people, More Mother is in this, and they are very exciting and interesting and strange.
Um,
And I think I'd done a bunch of. I'm not sure how they got to me. Besides, I'd done lots of work with International Anthem
mhm,
before, and
mhm,
maybe they liked it. And so this was like maybe my second iteration because I didn't know them. I had to kind of find my way through to the piece. I had done a whole other cover that wasn't exactly right, and then I just kind of let loose and said, "How about this?" And they
mhm.
were like, "Yes, let's do this." They gave me the text though, and I think I can't remember if I think I disassembled the text. I'm not sure. I
Okay,
think
okay. I just keep
yeah.
flashing on and off, so it's not covering your face entirely as you're talking about it.
It's okay.
My bad about that. I'm sorry.
It's not a problem.
This next one is one that I wasn't familiar with until I started grabbing images to include in this, and was really pleasantly surprised by this one, as
Hmm.
I feel like it really is is unlike anything else you've done.
Hmm. Yeah. Nicole is a good friend, and I was super happy that she had asked me to do this cover. She fully let me go with my instincts and kind of talked a little bit about what her thoughts are about the record.
Hmm.
And
Is this a photo of her, of the artist?
no, this is a friend of mine, Tracy Ramsey, who has appeared in lots of my artwork that isn't record covers.
Okay.
And my friend Fred Wells is on the right hand side, and my friend and actor Betty Gabriel, most well known from Get Out as the maid in Get Out,
Oh,
uh,
wow. Okay.
is on the left hand side. So yeah, I just made Tracy kind of the main character for the image, and I enjoyed making that weird kind of overlaying headdress with the possibly the planets, you know, intersecting. It was
Fantastic.
just it was fun to draw, like have that drawn over photo
Mhm.
thing work with all kinds of other design elements and the handwritten text. I was very happy with how that came out.
I love it. It's really, really striking piece of work. Black Monument Ensemble.
This one is hard to capture because in reality it's gold on the LP. And it's I'm kind of excited about the fact that you can't really it's really hard to photograph the actual
Mhm.
record because it's metallic gold.
Yeah.
And I'm always a little I'm always a little bummed that I like the mustard yellow. I just wish it could always be gold. Like I wish every time you looked at it, you could get the metallic gold.
Yeah,
But
it's like a foil, almost like a foil,
it,
right?
it is, yes, it's a foil that they wrapped over the record.
Mhm.
This one was one of my hardest of recent times, hardest cover to do because the project was so many years in the making, actually a couple years in the making, and it was always going to be called Where Future Unfolds. So I knew I had all this information, and after we did the show that we recorded and decided that this was going to be it was just like after the show, the strain of putting on the show and the worry and having it be over and then having a recording that I really like, it was just like having an album like dropped in your lap. You're like, okay, good, now you have an album. And then I was like, oh no, now I have to do the artwork for it. And I don't want this artwork to be disappointing. So the tactic I took was to like take artwork that I had been working on during the whole section of working on this project. So I went back to the last year and a half or 2 years. And I said, I'm going to look through this work and then I'm going to make a new collage from that work because I felt like the work was connected to the sound because it's the thing I was doing at the same time.
Sure. I just want to. I mean, clearly. I feel so strongly about your work. Your work to me, it evokes so many eras in design and album jacket design simultaneously, and it's somehow manages to be deconstructivist to all those things at the same instant. Um, Not that it matters to anybody else necessarily but me, but when I look at your work, I see G Voucher shows it, it's clear in it to me, and I don't know if she is an influence or not in your work necessarily, but that the starkness of the, not in this case not necessarily black and white, black and brown tone, gold tone, but just that contrast, the again the density of it, the detail. I love sitting with your jackets. I love, like, to me, I feel like a kid again sitting with Sergeant Pepper or Revolver. Like, it get to pour over these tiny details that are, frankly, not necessarily lost in a digital era or formats, but it's not. They're
Hard
not.
to appreciate.
Yeah, they're. Yeah, you can really, and I just, it's so I don't know how. I don't know how academic you are in your approach to album jacket design. Some people are very, it's very, there's not a lot of intellectualizing of it. You know what I mean? For me, I've probably spent a lot of time overthinking a lot of it, but I do like to see the threads, and I love to see the influence that one person or region or era has on another. And and again, like I look at your work and I think of people like 23 Envelope, if you're familiar with them.
I don't know.
The people who are doing Cocteau Twins records and stuff on 4AD, these full color, that stuff is full color. It's photographic. It's collage esque in the sense that they're taking feathers and metallic leaf and stuff and laying them out on a table and photographing it. But it's all about the texture. It's all about the that tactile quality. And to me, we've already talked about the grime in your work. To me, that's a real presence in what you do. But just from an analog or the primitivist place, as opposed to these photographers and their cameras and this whole artifice to it. You know what I mean? This is much more immediate, much more just spilled out on the paper, and yet for me, there's a continuum there, and I appreciate it so much.
I appreciate that. Like, when doing this work, like, I actually I don't ever imagine that anyone would be thinking about it in that way.
Yeah.
I think about, I try to do work in service of the album. I know that most of the time when people choose me to do graphic work, they want to see something of my aesthetic, which is really great to have that liberty to be able to be like, most people just say, do your thing. And I try to honor the record within the tonalities and the like energy and try to bring something to the record. Um, I do. I think that there is a academic quality, but it all operates in my head.
Okay.
Uh, I spend so much time staring at the screen. Just staring at it. Even after I think it's done, I have to stare at it for a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah, I
Uh,
know that very well.
since it's a computer, there are versions that never see the light
Mhm.
that had something good about them, but didn't make the cut. So it's like I think I approach it like a mix. Like
Mhm.
when you're making a record, when you're mixing a song, you want to find the truth of that visual, and you want to make sure that all the density or the layers all kind of work together to create the narrative, the feeling, and the overall like presence that you're looking for.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of thought goes into it, and some of them come out like that.
Mhm.
Some of them just like present themselves, and some of them I have to labor over for a long time. But I think the one thing I do want to mention real quick is that in terms of like the kind of tactile, quality, one of my favorite tools is this. So I do almost all my ink drawing with bamboo sticks.
Wow. Okay.
That's how I get the quality that they give, because the bamboo stick doesn't really hold ink well. Like,
Right.
it either glops it on, or you get a good line for like a couple times, and then you get a crappy line.
Okay.
So I feel like I've always been lucky that I could just draw naturally.
Mhm.
But for me, drawing naturally isn't the end all be all of everything.
Right.
I mean, drawing well. And
Right.
so the bamboo stick kind of messes me up and makes me have to make other decisions. Sometimes what
Yeah.
my intention is doesn't come out.
Right.
And so
Okay.
that
Okay.
makes it fun. So I'm always kind of in battle with the drawing in some way, or with the ink in the
I
stick.
love that. Have you? Did you draw as a child?
Yeah, I've been drawing since I think I got into comics when I was in third grade.
Okay.
Maybe I was like 10 years old or something, maybe third, fourth grade, and that's when I realized that there was like a thing. Like I used
Mhm.
to draw, and all kids drew, but then when I discovered John Byrne, X-Men issue 111, which was the first of his series, and I bought it when it came out, and I was like, this is amazing. And so I was like, I like this. So I started drawing all the time.
Do you find these days when you're working, this question popped up in my mind a few minutes ago, and I was having this conversation with someone the other day. Is there kind of a golden hour for you work wise? I mean, I think I'm not alone in saying that I find my work is better or I'm more like in the zone when it comes to doing artwork late at night,
Mhm.
and generally like really late at night with no one around.
Mhm.
And even though I don't do it very often anymore and it's not really practical, I feel like my best work comes sometime between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning,
Mhm.
after 3 or 4 nights of that.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know why.
Well, I think that it might be changing for me, but traditionally it's always been through the middle of the night.
And that,
I've always liked to work when everyone else is asleep. Like I feel like I'm getting extra hours that no one's using. And I was like, no one's using this time, so it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting all this work done. It's great. Um, but I feel like it really worked for me and it benefited me for a long time. And I'm trying to learn how to break that habit because I don't want to get too superstitious about it. But I also feel like I've always felt that creativity is a muscle, and the more you work that muscle, the better it gets, the more available it is. And if probably you will agree, but in my early days when I did record covers, I would do like one record cover and then I'd be like, I'm spent. I can't do another record cover for 6 months. I put every idea, and then after a while, you're like, you got another record cover? Let's do it. Let's make it.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think that can be that can apply to work habits as well.
Mhm.
I do love to work in the middle of the night, but I also love to learn how to have access to it at 7 o'clock at night, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So
Right.
I try to work towards that as well.
Right. That's a good end to have in mind. We've talked about Black Monument Ensemble, and I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about that tonight before it gets too late. This project, something that it's been it's had a lot of impact on me, and I've shared it with a lot of friends this year, and it's got something of a, I don't want to say universal appeal because that makes it sound like it's cornflakes, but it has a poignancy, I think, and a timeliness, while at the same time being timeless, that I think people are finding it very moving. I've found it very moving, and I've found myself returning to this record over and over again this year, and hearing it in my mind when I'm not playing it, and I almost feel haunted by it in a sense. And I know it was. I know this is a project that's been developing over the last few years, and I know this was a recording that was not improvised, but recorded live, and certainly had a lot of planning in it. But you were able to sort of capitalize, I guess, a little bit on a kind of I don't know, immediacy with it in a sense. What's the response been like to this record? I mean, and particularly, I'm asking that question to do with young people in particular. Have you heard from people younger than us who have heard this? I mean, have you gotten feedback, or are we strictly is this something that's only on the radar of people within a certain kind of cultural framework, so to speak?
Well, I feel like to answer that question, I have to turn to either some of the singers in the group and social media. So since this, strangely not strangely, but during the pandemic, when the uprisings and protests were happening, people turned to this record a lot. Social media, Instagram kind of told me that people were listening to it and playing it, and it did something for them. And so the people that I saw that were listening to it, they did span age groups. One thing that, and I know the singers are in their singers and dancers, appreciate it and listen to it, and the dancers are as young as 17.
Okay.
And then the singers are in their late 20s, and they're feeling it. I know that young and old at concerts are really enjoying it. One of the cool things about the group is the oldest member of the group.
Really?
Yeah, 52, and the youngest member of the group, I think, is 9. So we span a wide age group, and so there's places to plug in for everyone. So when people come see it live, there are little kids that are just loving it, transfixed, regardless of the fact that there's a 9-year-old in the group, but they're transfixed by the music. And it seems to operate outside of a genre. Mm-hmm. So just it appears to just be available, you know. So to answer your question, I feel like there are lots of different kinds of people and different ages are responding to the record.
You're kind of taking the concept of all ages show to a whole different level, to a whole different paradigm now. You know?
Yeah. Also, I'm trying to also work outside the music scene, because I feel like art and music, everyone should have access to it, and everyone has the ability to appreciate it. And I felt like for a long time that the music scene had just become so kind of codified that all know what to do when we are engaging in a show. And I was like, well, what happens if we put the shows in different spaces, like the Garfield Park Conservatory, or playing the cultural centers here in Chicago, or, you know. So I've been trying really hard to make the shows cheap or free, and put them in spaces that lots of different people can go to. So yes, the concept of all ages show is still there, but it's not in the context of a club.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like I mean that topic, that discussion could be a rabbit hole in and of itself. It's in terms of outdated political ideas that have been political related to music and how they've evolved, and things that were drastically important, and debates that raged in the 90s that have since either in some cases evolved into other debates, or in some cases just dissolved entirely. But things like barcodes on records and door prices and those kind of things seem remarkably simple now, considering the kind of sort of skullduggery that we're dealing with on a scale of a Facebook or something like that, and then the irony that we're using platforms such as that to get this message out, to create an audience, to maximize convenience for people, is to use this medium, and here we are, to some extent, discrediting the medium by shedding light on. Well, I mean, it's a discussion we haven't really had, but there's so many problems with social media. There's so many problems. There's so many inherent conflicts with even just marketing this way, if you want to use that word. It's remarkable how different the landscape politically is when it comes to this stuff, and in the context of music, in a fairly short time. But that's probably
that's a whole different other
concept for yeah. As I was doing a little bit of background checking on you for the show, I came across a quote from a few years ago that I feel is prescient now, and might be a good way to start winding this down. And I'm going to just throw this at you if you don't mind, and see if I can get a comment from you. Back in 2016, when the Eternals' new album Espiritu Zombie was dropping, you did an interview with Jet Fuel Review, in which you state, "The election of Donald Trump is the best example of our zombified culture. We are in for some big trouble coming up. Espiritu Zombie creatively is addressing the coming apocalypse. Get your survival packs together, folks. The end has begun." I can't say that I don't agree with every word of that completely, and I was wondering how you felt about that now, well, virtually 4 years after the fact, and on the eve of something potentially just as alarming and disorienting.
Well, yeah, yeah, I felt really strongly about that, and I feel like I was justified in feeling strongly about that. I also feel that like uh, I think I was I think that was in my I was in my zone in my like preparing for the apocalypse. Like I feel like I'm preparing for the apocalypse since I was 14, right? Um, and now as a good punk rocker, now that the apocalypse is popular culture, I'm totally against the apocalypse. I'm not about talking about the apocalypse. I'm talking about what are the possibilities for what can we do? Like now that we're living in the apocalypse, what's the next step? What can
Yeah.
we imagine? How can we move forward? Like what can we create? What are the steps to take? Like I feel like there's no argument. Like there's no discussion or argument anymore. Like if I was to say, get your apocalypse pack together because we're in for a bumpy ride, people are like, yeah, no doubt.
Mhm.
So where do we go from here, and how do we make new channels and carve new pathways to create something so that we can survive, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's mostly what I've been thinking about in terms of a bunch of the work I do. I've been working in prisons, teaching art since 2014. I've been working in a high school program called Space School Partnership for Arts and Civic Engagement through the Museum of Contemporary Art, and working with high school students, the Black Monument Ensemble, the Eternals, just trying to figure out ways of creating, art and conversation that moves the needle in some way towards something new.
Mhm.
So I think that's maybe the way I would respond to that.
That's a very that's a very concise and eloquent way of not only stating that, but I think that's a great way to sort of put a cap on what we've been talking about here this evening. I do want to say, I just want to go through, we have a couple of comments I want to point out. My good friend in Denver, Colin Bain, mentions that he's looked up your page on Discogs and had no idea that you did so many of his favorite record covers. So
Great.
that's nice. Thank you, Colin, for being here. My friend Adon from down in Venezuela says, "I love the analogs aspect of the process." I believe he's talking about your record design process. I love the he says analogous. I think he means analog. I like the
Analog quality.
yes, yeah. I think that's yeah. I think these projects manage to have a fairly strong and fluid narrative. I think that's very very true.
That's great.
And then there's one thing I did want to mention, Damon, before the night is over, and this was something that I think other people here in Hot Springs might get a kick out of. I was surprised. Well, I wasn't surprised, but I was surprised that I hadn't made this connection. I found out that you have another connection here in Hot Springs that's not me, and that is Bill Solider. Blue Meanies.
Oh, Blue Meanies! Oh my God, I haven't thought about Blue Meanies in forever.
Yeah, well, Bill Solider is a fan of yours, certainly. And
The Blue Meanies were the jam. Trenchmouth used to play with them all the time.
apparently so, yeah.
Yeah.
And so Bill, full disclosure, Bill is the founder of Low Key Arts.
Oh, hi, Bill. Sorry, it took me a second, Bill.
That's quite all right. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the world of music, feels like a small town that gets smaller every week. But Bill's partner Chase has been aware of Damon for decades as a musician, but never knew he was such a prolific visual artist. And great discussion. So thank you, Shay, for that. Yeah, sorry, I meant to mention the Bill thing earlier, and that's just a cool footnote for Another reason we got to get you down here to Hot Springs one day.
Yes, and if Bill's listening, hello, Bill. And if he's not listening, tell him I said hi. Yeah, I haven't seen him in a long time, but I appreciate you, Sonny, and I appreciate you asking to me to have this conversation. I these days, like I've been slowing down a little bit on my record covers. I'm just finishing the new Black Monument record, and I'm doing a couple for Quinn Kirchner, and I'm doing one for Brazil, but I'm doing almost none these days, or very little. I guess I just named three, but it's such a part and like kind of a natural part of my life and the things that I've loved. So record covers are just always there. I have spent a lot of time, making music or doing animation projects in prison and working with high school students and trying to make connections to things that I don't really take the time to have conversations about the graphic design, like portfolio of work that I have. And so it's always nice to connect with you and do that. I mean, last time I really even thought about it was our show together.
That's right. We did a show together in Chicago 6 years ago, actually. 6 years ago, 2 months ago, at the I Paint My Mind Gallery, which I think it wasn't the last time I've seen you in person, but that too has been a minute. So I need to come to your neck of the woods one of these days too.
Well, when we can all travel again.
Yes,
more safely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Damon, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our conversation tonight and how grateful I am to you for being part of this and being our kind of guinea pig here for Movers and Makers for Low Key Arts.
Happy to be here.
I really can't think of anybody I would rather have taken this jump with than you, and really respect your work and everything that you have given to us here in the so-called underground for 3 decades. I'm very, very grateful to you, and hope you keep on keeping on. And would like to also mention that people should go check out bandcamp.com and search for Black Monument Ensemble, where future unfolds. And sounds like we'll have a new record dropping sometime.
I think probably February.
That's soon. Okay, fantastic. That's exciting. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you,
Damon.
All right.
We'll pick it up again sometime. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.